Um, if you're starting, Mike, we can't hear you.
Dental building deconstruction. I want to move that up, but I'm not seeing a lot other than the committee members that have joined us at this point.
Dan's on there.
Sorry?
Dan's on there.
Hi, Dan. Are you here for that discussion or are you?
Yes.
Okay, maybe we can move that up. We've got some facilities things and maybe we could do that all at the same time after we hear from Arel and the space study. Do we have any public comment today, Katrina?
We haven't received any, Mike.
I don't have anything particular to mention on the chair's report, except we've got a big agenda, so we're going to have to move right along. So I'm going to start with Arel. Arel, you want to introduce the downtown facilities report on the space study? Use your microphone, please.
Good morning, everyone. We are here again. We were here a month ago presenting really the process of the Center of Government Space Program update. We received several comments from committee members and we've addressed some of those in this final report. We sent out an revised presentation, would have been early Tuesday, but we sent the initial version last Friday. So we hope you've had an opportunity to go through that. Holt is here again, Cindy Kaufman and Quay Thompson to walk us through the presentation. We hope you'll like the information that they've been able to gather through this study. And we've provided some options and our hope and goal is to at least bring you closer to making a decision to pursue certain options. So with that, I'll turn over the time to Cindy for the presentation.
Welcome, Cindy.
Do people hear me?
Yes.
I know people hear.
Use the microphone about 6 inches away from it. It's good.
Is that good? Right
Yeah.
now? Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you all for having us. As Arel said, that we listened to your comments, and as a result of our space study, we knew that we needed to add some more information to the report and do a little bit more exploration. So today, here we are on July 21st, reviewing the final at this point. So the project understanding, we understand that the county is facing a shortage of space for staff. There is a desire to get rid of or vacate leased space. And we did do a study a couple years ago for the 400 block, but now there have been property purchases for the 300 block of Tayuga Street, and that changes everything. We understand that the state wants to occupy all of the courthouse, the main courthouse, and there have been other changes to our culture, like in the pandemic, for instance. There have been some staffing and program updates as well. So the statement of goal for this study is to make a determination for the center of need, make a determination of need for a center of government. And I'm not going to repeat everything that we did review last month, but we do have on this page sort of a process outline, which you can review, and the 19 departments that were included in the study. And just to remind you that the Department of Motor Vehicles was included in the study just to look at their space, but they are not really in play in terms of relocation. Also included in the study is an in-depth analysis of each department. On the left is a space program where we're looking at all the required spaces. And on the right is a summary that will be very useful to you in the future. If we were to say that all the departments in play were to go into one new center of government building, it would be a big building. It would be about 63,000 square feet. This is adding up all the departments and not taking into into consideration the existing facilities that you already have. So we're going to look at what are some of the variables in play. So this is a site plan of the locations for the departments in downtown Ithaca, as well as the BOE storage facility on Hanshaw Road. And we are just showing for reference the 3rd Street Department of Motor Vehicles and also Human Services, which is not in play, but it does show that adjacency is nearby COFA. And on the right is a listing of the departments we looked at, their net assignable square feet. That's really related to their program, the exact space they need for their program, not including any grossing factors for circulation or mechanical. It's purely the program. And they are all you could look at the map here, and the numbers on the right correspond to that graphically. So we have 2 departments in Center Ithaca. That is leased space, assigned council, and workforce New York. And there is a desire to vacate leased space, so please keep that in mind. We have the Office of Human Rights on State Street. That is a leased space. We have the Workforce Development Board in Tompkins Trust on Seneca Street. That's a leased space. We have the Board of Elections storage facility on Hanshaw Road. That is also leased. We have 3 departments in Annex Building C, Assessment Board of Elections and ITS. That building is at the end of its life and is considered as not functional for the future. We understand that the main courthouse needs, the state needs all of the building for their program. So the county clerk and the district attorney need to vacate that building. There has been some discussion around a possible alternative use for the Human Services Annex, where COFA and Veteran Services is currently located. And the old jail, number 8, that is possibly we understand that it will remain as part of the campus for the center of government, but it might have different programming included. And that would be the same situation for this building, the D.T. Tompkins building, the old courthouse. The legislature chambers would definitely remain, but there might be some consideration for expansion for the staff to the lower level. And with that, we looked at what is remaining. We have the Human Services Annex, which is number 7. We have the D.D. Tompkins building, which is number 9, and we have the old jail, which is 8. So after we remove the leased space and the 2 buildings that programs need to vacate from, we are left with these 3. And if we look at the net square footage required for all the departments. We have 46,800 approximately. And that gives us a shortfall of 33,300 net available square feet. And then if we look at the excuse me, if we look at the program without the Human Services Annex, we have a shortfall of about 38,000 square feet. So we need a place for these departments to be located. And so within the next 3 slides, you will see 3 options that we are considering proposing to you. And the first one is option 1A. It's including the Human Services Annex. It's 1A in which COFA would remain in place. We understand that they're very happy with their building at the moment. Thank you. Veteran services could perhaps remain in that building, number 7. And a nice partnership based on what we've learned from our interviews might be human rights adjacent to veteran services and next to COFA as well. So in this particular scheme, we have COFA, human rights and veteran services in Human Services Annex. We've looked at adjacencies in the departments. We've also looked at what departments really want to be public facing, and that created an answer to which programs might be located in the new building and which might be better suited for the old jail or this building that we're sitting in right now. And for the old jail, we are suggesting that Workforce New York, assigned counsel, and county attorney might be a good fit for that building. And we also see that for the DD Tompkins building, that the legislature offices and workforce development might be a good fit for the first floor. In the new building, we looked at the programs that were very forward-facing, public-facing, and would benefit from adjacencies and shared amenities. So we have assessment, Board of Elections. We looked at BOE storage there, county administration, county clerk, district attorney, finance, planning, sustainability, ITCTC, and ITS, human resources. That building, that new building, would be approximately 43,000 gross square feet. The pros of this concept is minimal construction work in the existing Human Services Annex. COFA is really happy to stay in space, and it's appropriate for that community, for the elders that are their clients, and the convenience of going to that building, whereas COFA might be a little hard in terms of wayfinding for some of the clients to visit a new center of government downtown. The cons might be that the 3 departments that are not that are in Human Services Annex are not on the center of government campus. They are quite remote from that. Workforce New York, which is public facing, is not in the center of government building in this scheme. And separating county admin and county attorney might not be ideal in this scheme as well. The next option that I would like to review is option 1B. We're still keeping Human Services Annex in this scheme. And in this one, we are locating the Board of Elections and their storage in the Human Services Annex. That is a nice solution potentially, because the Board of Elections leadership has said that it's very important to them to be adjacent to their storage. They would like that. So, and it would be very convenient to be unloading and loading the voting machines. So there are a lot of benefits to having the Board of Elections and their storage in one building. So that is really the only difference. In that case, we bring COFA, Human Services, Office of Human Rights and Veteran Services into the new building. The pros of this, I explained, about the co-location of Board of Elections with their storage. The cons is that the Board of Election group will not be on the center of government campus. And this one also has a couple of the same cons as the previous slide.
The exception also creates a 43,000 square foot.
Yep. And then option 2, which is our last option that we explored, is what happens if there was no Human Services Annex, if that property was sold and used for another purpose, and we brought all of these departments to a center of government campus. So we have the same programs identified for Old Jail and D.D. Tompkins Building. And then we have COFA, Human Rights, Veteran Services, and Board of Elections in this new building. So the pros, all departments are on the center of government campus. Almost all public-facing departments can be located in the new building. Adjacencies definitely offer more opportunity for shared amenities and services and opportunity for collaboration. And the cons, we have some of the same cons again with a few departments being located in buildings 8 and 9. They might not be perceived as cons by all, but it is something for discussion. But in this particular option, the new center of government building would be about 7,000 to 8,000 square feet larger than in the previous solution. So it would probably add an additional floor or a story or substantially add to the footprint. And another potential con is that more parking would be required near the campus because of more departments being located in this area. We did a quick look at staff as it relates
Cindy,
to.
could I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
With the two variations of the center building, with the smaller one, how many floors, and with the bigger one, how many floors?
So the smaller one is about a 43,000 square foot building. This, if we looked at a building with about 10,000 square feet per floor, this would bring us to a 4-story building. If we went to the next scheme, it would likely need to be a 5-story building. Sure. So moving to this discussion around parking, we did not perform a really in-depth parking analysis, but we wanted to just present to you the number of staff that are likely to be moving to this area. So we have on the left the location, the departments that are located off this campus. They are either in lease space or they're in the Human Services Annex. And in schemes 1A, we're bringing 33 additional staff to this center of government campus area. In 1B, we would be bringing an additional 51 people. And then in option 2, an additional 61 people. So we need to consider that as well. So this sheet is basically a summary of the different options. Before I get to this, does anybody have questions on any of the previous slides?
I have,
When you were just talking about parking, was there any consideration given to parking for public?
Not in this study, no.
Move everything into a centralized area. I imagine there's going to be a stronger need for parking on the street for if that, or people going over to the parking ramp.
Yes,
That's something we have to keep in mind. Thank you.
yes, yes.
can I ask you-
For Lisa, the state saying they want us to move out of the courthouse, we have that right? Or say,
We can't hear.
I'm sorry, I was asking about the relocation of current departments in the courthouse, whether that we've been gotten actually notice of that or just a request.
I would characterize it as just a request. Arel and I met with OCA a couple of years ago and talked about inquiring about the state's needs and eventuality of needing the entire space in the courthouse. And they indicated, yes, they need more, not less. They have not given a timeline.
Okay, thanks.
But I could expand on that. Several years ago, it's probably been 6 years ago, the state required that we do a space study of the building to accommodate their space needs. And so there is a legal requirement that we provide space to the unified court system. We did that study with LaBelle Associates, which had multiple phases. And eventually that space study showed that all county departments would need to vacate the building. At the time, they did push that the legislature needed to vacate because they wanted to move the Supreme Court that was in this room over for security requirements, and then Office for the Aging also moved out of the ground floor. There are two to three other phases to that, but because of budget restraints that they've had over the last few years, they've held off on that. But when we met over the last couple of years, and they were aware that we were doing a center of government, and that the timetable at the time was about 5 years from when we would occupy a potential center of government. They indicated that timing would work very well to move forward with addressing the subsequent phases of space needs in their building. So
Thank you.
it'll happen eventually.
We just got Ann's and Amanda's pictures back up. I see Ann's got a hand.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. One question I have right now is, as far as the space needs for this building that we're in, the old courthouse, is there a consideration for expanding the needs of legislators and legislators and clerks to have more room in the first floor of this building?
Yes, that has been looked at. The idea has been discussed that perhaps the clerks and staff can move down to the first floor, as well as a couple offices for the legislators to share. And that would potentially look like perhaps these two offices that are currently in the space can go away maybe, and there could be more room for public. Perhaps the chair's office can be located down on the first floor, but we really haven't analyzed it so specifically, except to look at how many square feet would be needed on the first floor for the staff and the legislators. Does that answer your question, Ann?
So you said, can you repeat the very last part about the amount of space needed for legislators and clerks, the additional space?
Sure. I could actually go into the program and tell you exactly. I'm not going to bring that up right now because it might get us a little bit into the weeds, but I will tell you that currently, we're looking at about 1,500 net square feet, so programmatic square feet, or 1,800 gross square feet for the legislature offices. And we do have 2 offices for the legislators to potentially like hotel in and share. And then the staff would be on the first floor as well.
So we would have additional, let's say, an additional clerk space.
Yes.
In addition to what we have here, there would be additional clerk space in all the scenarios,
Yes,
and there would still be room for the workforce. Okay,
yes, yes.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Kathy Covert wants to comment.
I also discussed with Cindy and others, space for an executive session as well. And I think that's taken into consideration.
Right. So we are looking at the executive session to be down on the first floor as well. And there's also space in the basement that can be tapped into. So, yeah.
Again, I can't see everybody, so if you want to make a comment, please sing out and tell me up there.
Dan's got a question there.
Who has?
Okay, Dan is asking how many extra parking spaces could we fit if the new building had ground floor parking? We haven't analyzed that, Dan.
Yeah, so I'll just, one comment about parking and to refer to Mike's question about the height of the building in terms of stories. The number of stories is going to be, related to the footprint of the building. The challenge is as the building gets bigger in footprint and gets lower in stories, we start to lose parking. I imagine that we wouldn't probably have parking on the first floor because it's a very public and accessible, very valuable real estate in terms of departments. There could be the possibility for parking below the building. We'd need to use some square footage to get down there. But in terms of the story question and the parking question, how much square footage we have and how tall the building is sort of part of the design of the building and not necessarily, within the context of the study.
Dan, did you get your question answered?
Did you say Dan or Ann?
Well, Dan had something on and I know Cindy responded a little bit to it. I just want to make sure.
I think he said sort of.
Are you able to talk to us, Dan? I guess we're getting chats from Dan.
I think maybe more directly to your question, Dan, we don't know the square footage of the ground floor until we design the building, start thinking about how many stories the building has. But if it was, what's that blue box that you put was how many square feet?
It's about 10,000.
10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could certainly answer that question. We could do a quick parking layout of a 10,000 square foot building and let you know how many cars could park on the first floor or below the building.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I was asking. Approximately how many parking spaces could you fit in that footprint? Thank you.
Yeah, we can get back to you with that.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Dan. Anyone else have particular questions or comments? Lee?
I don't know that there would be an answer to this at this point, but all your square footage analysis is based on current program needs and maybe a little bit of what they're anticipating in the future. I know, Arel, our history is we tend to build things for what we need today and then realize shortly thereafter that we've shorted ourselves. Are you looking into a contingency or a expansion capability or potentially making it a little bit bigger so that we know when some of these new programs develop or staffs have to change, that it can be done without launching into another building project 5 to 10 years down the road? We shorted ourselves on one project up there and based on what was happening then and it evolved really quickly.
Right, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Many of the departments did give us anticipated staff for the next several years. I think that the way the building is designed for flexibility and fluidity is going to be very important because we do want to take into consideration growth for sure. And we understand that we don't want an obsolete building, 2 years down the road or 10 years or 15 or 20 even, or even 30. The idea is that the building is designed with a little bit of growth factor, but even more importantly is we look to locate departments that would be good, that would be beneficial to be adjacent to each other, where there could be sort of a fluidity and a flexibility of space. So that I think is how we would like to handle growth or changes in departments, because some departments might actually shrink in the future. And we certainly don't want to design a building that's so large that it is, too big on the site, too expensive. It needs to really be right sized. So flexibility is key in our opinion. Did you want to add to that? Okay.
There were a few departments that did indicate growth.
Yeah.
Not immediate, but looking to the future. Others were pretty firm in saying, no, we're not going to grow. County attorney was one of them. And I kept saying, you sure? Because, we're talking, I'm not just talking 2, 3, 5 years. We're talking 10, 20 years. But there were a few that said no. We, as Cindy's indicated, as we've discussed with departments adjacencies, we also were suggesting more of open type, work type stations, not as much hard walls. Where it needed, we would do that because that would give you a little more flexibility. So we indicated that to the departments as we started that discussion, that would give them that flexibility for growth. One good example is at the health department now. The building's been there 12 years now. We are looking at some modifications there, unfortunately, because it's been an open workstation for most of the building, maybe half to 2/3 of it. It will allow us to make those changes to accommodate some space needs. But I know you're referring to other buildings where we've not had that. We designed it basically for those immediate space needs and not really looked in the future. So there is a balancing act. We don't want to build it too big, but I think what we've done at this point, and as I said, this is just a space study. Really, when you get into the design, we would look at all of those things and try to make sure that we would make accommodations for future growth.
I know, just another old history thing, when and I'm not sure you were here at that point, I know you weren't, when they built the mental health building.
No.
And there was some talk, and I think they shorted up so they could always go higher. But then when we had that conversation at different times, it's like the disruption to do that now in a working environment would be very problematic, if not impossible. And so I just wonder at times, and again, to your point about overbuilding and fitting into the neighborhood, but if you got to a point of a 4-story building, might you consider going to a 5-story and not filling that space necessarily, but knowing that you've got that expansion capability, and at least the foundation there, it isn't going to change an awful lot. The roof isn't going to change a lot, and your systems aren't going to change a lot in that environment. But it just may be something to give some consideration on as you go along. The other question I had to do with the district attorney, and one thing I kept hearing was about the need for grand jury space, and they've moved that around. How has that factored in? Would that be the use of some of the larger conference rooms and so on? Or are you looking for some kind of more secure area than you would with other public conference rooms?
So that would be considered a space that would be a very large conference room that can be shared by other departments because they only use it
Friday mornings.
Yeah, and there are some specific requirements that the district attorney needs in an adjacency to that conference room. But we can accommodate that with shared spaces. And so their offices would not be adjacent likely to the grand jury space, but we would be accommodating what they need on those days. But it is in the program, to simply answer your question.
It's all in the new center government building right now. right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, currently that they're using the Human Services Annex space for grand jury, and it's worked out well. It has a separate entrance, it's secure, but definitely we discussed that with Matt, and we wanted to create a space since it's only used once a week and not every Thursday. That we wanted to make sure that wasn't a dedicated space, that other departments could use it, but also factored in the requirements. They needed a space attached to the grand jury for witnesses, because currently right now, well, where they used to have it at the main courthouse, witnesses would be out in the hallway and attorneys for either side could hear, who was there first, but also could hear discussions, which is really not appropriate. It's much better, at least temporarily over at Human Services Annex, but we wanted to make sure we factored in those space needs for the new building.
Exactly. So we do have in the program for the new building several smaller shared conference rooms, and they could be utilized for the witnesses.
Thank you.
I hadn't thought about the grand jury, but good point, Lee. And security would be extremely important. So that would be a separate issue that we might want to think about more. Was there any discussion about remote people? And I was reading an article about other counties that are moving some of the services to towns and using existing buildings, like in schools and town halls, so that they can expand their use, and also people don't have to travel as far for services. So I was just wondering if you thought about that.
Yeah, we did explore that question a lot, and we brought it up to every department. Are there any pandemic related changes, hybrid work? And there was really no one that wanted to have their employees hybrid or even remote. There might be a couple that are part-time, possibly slightly hybrid, but in general, we learned that, the government is an in-office staff and, public facing for the most part, and really needing to be around each other. That's what we learned. But I do think that, in situations where departments might grow, possibly it's a temporary situation, we could always look at hybrid in the future as a way to expand staff if they need to. But in general, we don't have anybody sort of noted as fully hybrid.
Right. In our discussions with every department, as Cindy said, we did bring that up. And there were some departments where we where they're working either remote some of the week. We created spaces that more that hoteling type setup where that same space could be shared by staff because they wouldn't be working concurrently. But as Cindy said, for the most part, many departments didn't say that they're looking at kind of that remote work model. And the challenge right now, the way the county policy is, a lot of that is those decisions are made by department heads. Well, we can't design a building based on current department heads. Like Rick just announced he's retiring in November. So, he may have a certain view of what he would like, and it could change from the next department head. So we try to factor in some flexibility, and I think we have if that changes. And I know that there are currently departments that do like satellite offices, and Lisa knows better than I would, but I think assessment has satellite offices, and I know that DSS had looked at that in the past. I'm not sure if they have any, but that didn't come up in our discussion as far as what you're saying, Randy, about providing services in, surrounding
This has
municipalities.
been a really good discussion. Thank you for this presentation. And we've got a lot to process here and thinking about, and we're going to have some discussions in this committee and other ways about these various options that you've given us and any other ideas that may be out there. But we've got a big agenda. We really need to kind of move on. So thank you both for coming. I would just leave one thing about the grand jury room. It seems to me that ought to stay in the main courthouse where you've got court security.
Yeah, where currently is there's not enough space. That's why they moved out of that space.
Okay, well, I'll stop sharing. And the last slide, just for your reference, is a summary of everything. And next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Nice report.
I mean, the one question we actually do have, there was the next steps is really getting an idea of what direction this committee wants to take, whether this presentation should be shared with the full legislature, because at this point, their work is done. We have no costs with this, which could be additional, feasibility study, which is shown on the next steps.
I think we need another discussion here in this committee before we send it on to the full legislature, unless other people think differently.
I agree, Mike.
Just, can I ask something?
Go ahead, Ann.
So are you saying you're wondering about just this space study being reported to the full legislature? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see an issue with them knowing this information and, yeah, I would like for the full legislature to have this information.
How the rest of you feel?
Well, I don't think there's a problem with sharing it as long as we're clear that the committee is not advocating for anything yet. We haven't really had a chance to discuss it. So, I mean, you can certainly send an email to everyone, but you maybe don't want everyone starting to weigh in before we've had a real discussion.
Well, that was sort of the way I was thinking, but if folks want to share it, that's fine with me.
Yeah, we should share it, and I agree with Amanda.
All right, then let's, we'll plan on, can we send that out to the, Katrina, can we send that out to the other legislators and with the caveat that we haven't really had a chance to discuss it in detail?
I can take care of that, Mike.
Thank you.
And if you have additional questions, we're happy to come back in for another discussion.
Thank you for that as well. Okay. Staying on with facilities here. Aurel, you want to talk to us about the green facilities project?
Okay. Change hats here and talk about the green facilities project that we've been working on with Johnson Controls for past few years. We came to the committee last year, I think it was September timeframe, where we did a presentation on the preliminary assessment of the different phases of this project to achieve the goals that the legislature has set for carbon reduction. And we came up with 3 phases and indicated that we would be pursuing phase 1 initially, and that we were starting a study with Johnson Controls to do the detailed engineering, and that we would come back this year to discuss and present the findings and what the scope of work would be. We indicated because of the market conditions that it was very possible that we would not be able to do all of the scope items we call facility improvement measures that we had indicated in phase 1. And as it turns out, that's true. If you've had a chance to briefly review the presentation that we sent, would have been Tuesday or Wednesday morning. Yes, and so you'll see that the items that are on the phase one list are fewer. However, they're the ones that are most significant as far as addressing our carbon reduction goals. And so at this point, we have again at present the team from Johnson Controls, Chris Fitzsimmons, which is I call him the project manager, Joe Richards, and Ray Martucci on the engineering side, operation engineering, and myself, and I'm not sure if there's anybody else there. But in any case, we wanted to get right into the presentation. And Chris, do you have the PowerPoint, Chris? If not, I can, since I was just.
Welcome, everybody we're glad you
Yeah,
came to
there-
our meeting and we thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Appreciate it. Aurel, I have it. I can share if that's easier for you, unless you have it.
Yes, if you can go ahead and do that with.
Okay, just bear with me 1 second here. Okay. Just gotta find it quick. Okay, bear with me. Sorry, everybody. Okay.
First of all, did everyone, at least on the committee, receive the presentation beforehand?
And everyone, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
If everyone in this committee did receive the presentation, at least we knew we wouldn't be able to get it a week in advance. We actually
Sorry.
met Tuesday. It's been very fluid as far as getting pricing and information. And so we met as a team. Oh, Terry Carroll. I'm sorry, Terry. Terry Carroll, our Chief Sustainability Officer with Planning Sustainability, also has been very involved with the team as we've reviewed and discussed the potential scope items to include in this phase one. So here again it's the Green Facilities Net Zero Carbon Emissions Project, partnership with Tompkins County and Johnson Controls. It's a partnership that we have had for 18 years. I think if we go to the next slide, well, I don't think the next slide has it. In any case, I've worked with Johnson Controls even longer than 18 years. When we talk about the Human Services Building, those of you that may remember Big A building that no longer exists was the former hospital, DSS and Probation Youth Services and Facilities, then called Buildings and Grounds, were in that building. They claimed that it was a sick building. It turned out at least that couldn't be proven. But in any case, when that happened, we started the design process for the new Human Services Building, and they moved into that building in 1997. Back then, when we were still in Big A, we worked with Johnson Controls to create these clean rooms where we had HVAC dedicated and several air exchanges where all the copiers we exhausted. So that's where my, history and work with Johnson Controls started. That's 28 years ago. But more formally on energy improvement projects, it's been 18 years. The phase one big project that we started with Johnson Controls was in 2005, and then we added a subsequent phase, which was the main courthouse. We've done minor ones since then at the Public Safety Building, and this is really the big one. And I've really been updating the legislature probably the last 4 years that once we pay off the bond for that phase one that we did in 2005, which was about 15 years, that we would then be looking at another large phase project. And I indicated at the time, but we have a lot of new legislators, that the project costs would be much higher. The ones that we did back then were the low-hanging fruit. And now that we've addressed the low-hanging fruit, really subsequent measures are more on the renewable side that tend to be much more expensive. The payback on the phase one that we did in 2005 was 13 years. The goal initially had been 10 years, but there was no way we could get to 10 years with the projects that we had. So with some of that background, we can start into the slides here. And I'll turn it over to Terry Carroll to go over this slide.
Yeah, and so, as Arel said, the purpose of this project is really looking towards the county's sustainability goals and really aiming to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And so we would probably start by giving you the context of our greenhouse gas emissions. And this is from our 2019 inventory for county operations. That chart on the left, you'll see shows building emissions and vehicle emissions, with building emissions, being the larger percentage when you account for the outsized impact of methane, which is something we're increasingly doing. It's something that New York State is leading the way on, and we're following their lead, or in some cases, they're following our lead. We've done a great job of reducing emissions. That chart on the right shows the story that Arel has talked about. Since that partnership with Johnson Controls, we've seen a pretty steep decline in building emissions. With that said, there's still a long way to go. So, if we go to that next slide, Chris, we can see some of the efforts that are going on in Tompkins County as it relates to sustainability. Whether it's our electric vehicles, which is that top left photo, looking centrally, our partnership with Gravity Renewables on the Waterloo Hydro facility that provides us not only monetary credits in terms of electricity, but also renewable energy certificates that allow us to make 100% renewable claims. It's installing solar panels on our own buildings. It's, this bottom left is a brand new project where we're putting hydronic heating in the public works facility, as a precursor, hopefully to, putting in a geothermal system. And then, that bottom right, our latest addition, one of the e-transit vans for facilities, actually our HVAC crew, really trying to push forward our sustainability efforts. So we're on the cutting edge in a lot of ways when it comes to sustainability. And I think this project is another example of that. There's elements of this that are going to be leading in the state. And that's something that we can talk about a little bit later as well.
And this is, some of that background that I referred to earlier. 2005, that project I indicated. Then we did a phase 2, main courthouse. Phase 3 was public safety building. And then next slide. In 2019, that's when we started preliminary analysis for the phase that we're talking about. And at that time, we came up with about $30 million project. That was during COVID, but a lot has changed since 2019 as far as the market and pricing. In 2020, the county adopted, the Green Facilities Initiative with those goals that Terry was referring to. Last year, we brought to this committee the preliminary assessment and what those phases and projects would be, and then started this Flex Tech study and the detailed engineering late last year. It was December, and culminated that about 4 weeks ago. And then this year, the detailed engineering, which have developed the actions that we're proposing at this point for our phase 1 project. The team has not changed. Myself, Alan, and Terry on the county side, and then the second and third rows are Johnson Controls. The second row are the individuals present here at this meeting that have been involved in this for the last 2 to 3 years. And then the last row would be on the construction side. Once we move forward with the implementation, Jamie Budd, which actually worked the phase 1 project in 2005, 2006, which we were very pleased with, which resulted in a successful project in occupied buildings. And that what was key for us is that these are occupied buildings where we're making improvements and we cannot disrupt operations. They were able to do projects in buildings like the main courthouse, which was very challenging because of plaster ceilings. They didn't have drop ceilings, so they did a lot of that work off hours. And by 7:30 the next morning, the departments couldn't tell that we were there because they did a great job cleaning up. And then they started back up that same evening. And then on the performance specialist, it would be basically to verify the savings once we complete those projects. This is a slide that we shared with you last fall. It's harder to see there are different colors there. And so they're the 3 phases. The first several up to where it says geothermal installation, which is almost near the bottom. Up to geothermal installation, which is about middle of the page. That's phase one. Phase two is, which is actually does my, no, where it says boiler replacement to geothermal installation for another building is phase two, and phase three are the last 4 lines, which is retro commission geothermal. So that was initially what we were proposing. And then the phasing schedule would be this year into next year for phase one, phase two to 2024 to 2025, and the last phase would have been in 2026. Yes.
I am a new legislature. I'm just curious how do you measure your savings? Is it based on the rate you're paying for gas or electric? And are the carbon emissions based on just our consumption, not based on where the power comes from?
Yeah, those either Terry or Chris probably could respond to each of those regarding the savings.
So the savings are based on current rates. I think, you know, Ray has done the calculations. He builds in some escalation factors as well to account for the differences in electricity rates as time goes on and inflation and such. The carbon emissions reductions are based on, you know, different measures. So burning natural gas always has the same carbon impact. You know, the electricity grid changes over time. So we base on our regional electricity grid. We're in the New York upstate region, and so we base it off of that emissions factor.
Percentage of electricity is currently provided by gas or coal? I read 92%. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
In upstate New York, no, it's much less.
How much? I mean, ballpark.
I think upstate New York is over 75% emissions free. I can pull up the latest. You know, it's measured in something called the New York State Gold Book, which is put out by the New York State Independent System Operator every year. And I think the last one I looked at, it was over 75% emissions free. You know, a mixture of hydro from Niagara Falls, a couple of nuclear facilities, some wind, and some solar.
Thank you.
So this was, as I indicated, what we presented last fall. This was part of that. And as you see in the top preliminary assessment, September of 2021. So our goal was in the phases to try to almost do it in you know, even thirds with the carbon reduction. So we wanted to try to achieve significant carbon reductions in each phase. And that's what we shared in this slide back last fall. As I said, we then started the detailed engineering. And so what has changed is several things. The pricing has gone up significantly in certain areas. And so the deliberations that we've had as a team, which included myself, Terry, Alan in our office, as well as Johnson Controls, multiple meetings as we've gone through each of the facility improvement measures that were shown on the previous slide, and then looked at really where the priorities are. You know, if we're trying to achieve carbon emission reductions, which of those improvement measures will, you know, really give us the most bang for the expenditure? And so that's what's resulted here. We dropped out, you know, certain projects either for future consideration or that, you know, it just didn't make sense at this point to do. And we did move up a project, and it's harder to see. I mean, the handouts we provided you, you can see the color distinction, but the last item there, rooftop unit replacement, was initially in the previous assessment as part of phase two, which we indicated on the bottom. All of the other ones above that were original phase one, but not all of the items in phase one are included here. And really the big ones for us are the geothermal, the VRF which is variable refrigerant flow installation, which would be at mental health. The geothermal, just so you know, would be at the Public Works facility. And initially it was proposed to just do partial geothermal, which wouldn't get us off of natural gas entirely. And I said, well, what would it take to do that? Because I said, you know, in the future, if we want to do that, it's going to cost much more and be much more disruptive. If we were to do it now, what would it take? And so, and also by expanding the scope of it, Terry Carroll indicated that there's a grant opportunity that would hopefully they've submitted or nearing submission for that grant, provide a rebate or credit or however they do it of approximately $2 million, which was significant. I mean, that accounted for the additional scope, but we wouldn't be able to get it if we did the original reduced scope for geothermal. And Terry might indicate whether if we were to do that project at the Public Works facility, it would either be the first in the region and most likely the first in the state. I'm not sure, Terry.
Yeah, so to our knowledge, if we make the Public Works facility a net zero or carbon neutral facility, it'll certainly be the first in the southern tier region, and we think it'll be one of the first, if not the first, in New York State. So, and Randy, just to come back to your question, I looked it up real quick, and so for 2021, it's the Power Trends report by NYSO. They put upstate energy at 91% zero emissions free for area energy production.
Thank you, Chair.
So the other projects on that list that are the ones that would achieve, a large percentage of the carbon emissions reductions would be the LED lighting. That's one that affects every building, as you can see across that first row. Every building listed there would get LED lighting upgrades. And it's also the simplest to start. There's really very little engineering required. So that one would be one that could start quickly. And we'll show a schedule further on in the presentation. The next one is the building envelope weatherization, which also is one that's fairly simple to start, not much engineering required. And then we drop down to there's TEG electrical panel inspections. And those are all existing panels. And by doing inspection of the panels, they are able to help reduce carbon emissions by doing that. And that's also a fairly simple one to start. And then we drop down to controls upgrades. That one is going to take the whole 2 years to implement. And then the VRF, as I indicated, that's for the mental health building. Basically, what we would be doing there is replacing all of the 40-some heat pumps, nearly 50 heat pumps that are above the ceiling throughout the building, and putting these variable refrigerant flow units very close to where the heat pumps currently are, removing a cooling tower on the roof and all the rooftop units on the roof, including the natural gas boilers. So those are big as far as reductions in not only carbon emissions, but also in capital avoidance costs, as well as maintenance costs of the units that would be removed. And then, as I indicated, then we go into geothermal installation. And that would, of all of the projects listed here, that would be probably the largest and most disruptive. We would have to dig up the entire employee parking lot for a well field, 400 or so feet deep, and then run lines underground into the Public Works facility and remove the boilers and existing rooftop units that are at the end of their, or very close to the end of their service life anyway. All right, we can, we just did that. So that's good. If not, we would have done it at the same time. But
Randy, we
just
can't
did
hear you. You got to use your mic.
So I was asking about the roof after they took the units off. So
right. We actually replaced almost all of the roofing at that building, which was perfect about 2 years ago. So these are highlights of the phase one actions or facility improvement measures. We talked about the LED lighting, the carbon reduction. It's a major maintenance reduction because we wouldn't have to replace the existing T8 fluorescent bulbs as often, and it would provide improved level or lighting levels. Geothermal to the right, we've talked about, that would be a major contributor to achieving zero carbon emissions, and also would be a reduction in maintenance and operating costs for Public Works facility. Weatherization we talked about, and building controls optimization. And those are just some graphics that show the top left is the variable refrigerant flow unit that would be going into the mental health building. Several, as I said, 40 some would replace existing heat pumps. The slide on the right is LED lighting. We're all familiar with that. We, at least over the years, by policy, any any improvements, additions that we're doing into existing buildings, like we did the addition at the Human Services Building for the conference room, we put in LED lighting. Or if we have to change out an existing fixture, we go to LED, but we haven't done wholesale upgrades of existing lighting beyond what we did in 2005, 2006 of going to T8 fluorescent bulbs. The lower left is transformer replacements. The one in the center is insulation. I think both of the next two are basically installation of piping. All right, we can go to the next slide. So these are the results of what we would achieve after completion of the phase one, and I can give that to Terry, I think. Yes.
Yeah, so after this first phase, we're expecting a dramatic reduction in carbon, about 40% of what we're looking at overall from all of the green facilities activities. So we're pretty excited about that. Something that we mentioned earlier, setting that gold standard for counties, I think for municipalities across New York State, really demonstrating that leadership that governments can often project and help inspire, others within their communities. It really has a focus towards renewable energy, so a lot of our efforts are towards electrification of heating, acknowledging that for the county, we're able to make 100% renewable energy claims thanks to some of the arrangements we've made with Waterloo and our energy procurement strategies, but also acknowledging that New York State has a goal for all electricity to be renewable or at least emissions free by 2040. So we're heading in that direction. The total metric tons of carbon is going to be 524, which is a significant amount. That public works facility being net zero, like I said, it's going to be leading the region, if not the state. And we're also anticipating some dramatic public health benefits, removing combustion from buildings, making them tighter, making them more comfortable. They've all been shown to have health benefits over time. And so, that's something that, we're really happy to do to make sure that our staff are being well taken care of.
So these are the numbers, and this is the part where I indicated, they've increased the project cost for the phase one measures that we've discussed is $14.4 million. I know that Dan raised it, and I think Randy as well, as far as, costs and really the payback. And so back when we did the phase one in the slide that we showed earlier, we had the total savings and the project cost, and the payback was much higher, but we indicated that at that point, we hadn't done the thorough study, but that at this point we would bring, include, capital cost avoidance numbers, any grants or incentives, the carbon cost, as well as, any annual utility and operational savings. And so those are the numbers there. So basically you take the 14.4 and net out, your capital cost avoidance and the grants and incentives, and then, put it into your formula for a payback, which comes to 23 years, which is, I indicated before it was 13 years when we did the phase one. 23 years is actually not bad. And so we wanted to share, this information with you to let you know on the cost side what it's looking like.
Could you talk about the capital cost avoidance a little bit? And also the annual utility operational savings. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. They're predicting that electricity costs will go up 6% per year for the next 10 years. And I imagine you probably used a lesser number than that.
We did. Yeah, I think, Ray, that number was like 3.89.
I think about 3.6%. Yeah.
Right. So it's pretty, conservative number. And yeah, I was looking at numbers, but Ray did the actual payback projections on that, but that's the percentage which we used at that point. And I mean, those things can be adjusted. On the capital cost avoidance, we looked at the improvements that would be planned over the next few years. And so we worked with Johnson Controls to come up with the cost for those. And Joe, do you have at least the buildings in which systems or units we were looking at? We were looking at the replacement of the existing units at the mental health building, so the cooling tower. We have rooftop units. We're very close to the end of their service life, and the heat pumps. I mean, those heat pumps, many are original to when it was built, and I wasn't here then. I think it was 1993. And so we've replaced those as they failed, but we've not done a wholesale replacing all of the existing. So we included that, the library, and that's one reason why we moved the only phase two item that we moved up to phase one was the rooftop units at the library. So the library, I was involved in that project, and we moved into that building in 2000, so 22 years ago. Those are the original rooftop units, and we've had failure in every unit as recent as last week, where we had to replace a compressor, which is during cooling season, they're important and critical. So we've replaced after that one every single compressor in the 6 rooftop units, and there are 2 to 3 in each of them. And at 22 years, we're just saying they're not worth investing much more money. So we had planned to do that had we not done this in the next year or two anyway. We also had the systems over at the Public Works building. So geothermal rooftop units, the same thing. That one we moved in 2003 or 2002, 20 years ago. So all the rooftop units we were planned to replace within the next 3 years anyway. The boilers. And then what else was there, Joe, on that? The
building automation system. You've got many of the components for that system are 15, 20 plus years old at this point in time. So you're definitely be looking at a lot of failures over the next 5 years.
Right. We're over an hour into our meeting. We got a whole bunch of other stuff. How are we doing on this?
Yeah, I think we'll just advance to the next slide. That's just a rough schedule I indicated before. We don't need to spend a lot of time. You have that in your handout. The most immediate ones that could be started would be October, LED building envelope. The geothermal, lot of engineering still left to do. So that's going to be this year into next year, completion December of 2023. We can go to the next slide. Chris, you can talk very briefly on this.
Sure. So, and what this is kind of pointing towards are achievements, Open Blue Pioneers, Tompkins County, our partnership over 18 years so far. So that's something that we've been developing, and it's an award from us and Net Zero Buildings. Well facilities, just the health ratings of buildings. So it kind of mimics the LEED certifications and the NYSERDA benefits and rebates. Those also, become part of the awards and recognitions.
All right, next slide.
I'll speak to this too. Media coverage. We've been working with Dominic Recchio, myself, Terry Carroll, thinking about on the buildings, having QR codes, informing the public what we're doing in the county, and the media coverage will go on. There'll be a kickoff. This is something we all need to celebrate. It's a great initiative. So we've been working on that as well as, kind of the media approach. Terry, anything to add to that?
No, I'll just say that next week at PDEC, we'll be talking a little bit more about kind of our sustainability marketing efforts. So if you want to learn more about this, we can talk about it next Monday.
And this just is the milestones. The portion in the dark green is what we've already completed. And then moving forward is what we hope to achieve. Finalizing the contract, Johnson Controls, and then getting approvals to then start implementation October of this year. That's it for our presentation. If there are any questions.
Another presentation with a lot of meat in it.
Yeah. Sorry it worked out this way to have two.
Appreciate it. Can we stop sharing so I can see the group? And are there questions? Have any questions? Okay. Well, I would certainly like this to go to all the legislators as well then, so that they can all see that. I know there's a lot of interest in our county on this green initiative. We're spending a lot of money on it. told us last time, the folks from Johnson Controls, that we're out in front on this statewide. And I think that's important. I think we're proud of that. And we thank you for your presentation. I have a question from Randy Brown.
You mentioned about your bond expiring and maybe Lisa, when you do this next presentation on this, you just talk about the financial impact of what the bond would have to be if that's how it's being financed and those types of things.
Thank you all for being with us this morning.
I had a quick question for you, Mike. So when we did the assessment presentation last fall, we actually presented to the full legislature. I'm assuming you just want us to send the presentation to them, not a like a live presentation.
Let's send it first. If they want a full presentation, I'll be glad to talk with the chair about it.
All right, great.
Mike, I can also add the link to this meeting so they could see the presentation along with the document itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
All right, Arel, I guess it's a facilities day. You wanted to give us an update on the public safety renovation project.
Yes, that's going well. I think the last couple of meetings and the updates, I indicated that I was arm wrestling the contractors to try to get them to, the numbers to be more in line with what we had budgeted. And I was successful in doing that without having to come back to this committee. And I think the last time I indicated that I may have to come back for additional funding. That is not the case. We're able to accomplish full scope of the project within the authorized capital budget, which is $4 million, which is for both construction and consultant fees as well as miscellaneous project. Yeah, so that's great news. So I thank the contractors that we've been working and negotiating with over the last 2 months on this, which is the Smith Group, which is for the general work and site work. For the electricals, Matco Electric Corporation, they're local to Ithaca. And then for the mechanical is Piccadilly Mechanical. And I worked with them when we did the human services project back in 2009, 2010. So those are the three prime contractors that I've issued yesterday letters of intent to award contracts, and we're drafting the contracts now. And they're sending in their bonds and insurance so that we can move forward, review submittals, and have them start ordering materials. That's what's going to take the longest is the lead time on materials, and we're factoring 5 months before we even set our foot in the door at public safety. The generator, believe it or not, is a 56 weeks lead time for the generator. Fortunately, it's not going to affect all these other phases of the work. So I will update you once we have had our initial construction meeting with the contractors and have a tentative schedule for work.
Okay, questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Rel, for that update and the good news. I want to drop down to number 11 on our agenda, downtown facilities. And this is a resolution that's on our agenda at the request of committee from last time about the deconstruction of the dental building on North Tioga Street. And let's get that on the table, and then we'll have a discussion about it. Amanda's moving it, Ann is seconding it. So we'll open it up for discussion. And I know Dan is here. Dan, are you still with us here? Dan is with us for
yes.
the discussion as well. So we're glad to have you. I don't see any other legislators. Oh, Rich is here as well. Good, Rich. So let's open this up for discussion. Majority of the committee last time wanted to proceed with deconstruction of the dental building. So who wants to lead it? Randy?
I'd like to just hear from Real kind of the update of where has anything's changed since your last discussion.
No, the building is getting older and it's deteriorating a little more, but aside from that, no. I did touch base with the contractor. It's a WBE contractor about the work and indicated that the resolution was coming forward and that based on the decision that, I would be approaching them for, discussing a possible contract and a schedule for the work. But aside from that, nothing else has changed.
Are we still good with proceeding with this?
And as a question.
Dan? Oh, Amanda, I'm sorry. I didn't see what you
Yeah,
had.
no worries. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I'm not sure what other discussion we need. I feel like we've talked about it a couple times, which has been great. And I think this is a good first practical actual step to take as we decide what to do with that property as well as, the bigger picture going forward. So, yeah, thanks.
Dan, then Rich?
Thanks. I have a couple of questions and then a couple of comments probably. Can you remind us or what we, did we get a estimate of what it would cost to renovate that building? That's my first question.
Yes, we did. We shared that at the last meeting. I can bring it up here, but if not, I can just read it.
Yeah, it's in the resolution. $2,360,000.
Correct.
Okay, and estimate of a demolition cost?
$150,000.
Okay, thank you. I guess, so here's my comments. I remember, about 3 years ago, I made a statement to, I think it was to F&I, and I said, we've got this building sitting empty there, and it seems a shame when there's so many needs in the community. I know it's not a top quality building, but isn't there something we could do? And there was just kind of a, no reaction from anyone, which is fine, because I didn't have a concrete suggestion either. Well, a year later, we suddenly found a really good need and use for it, and we used it for a testing facility during COVID. So I'm not completely opposed to the demolition, but I'm just also not in a rush to do it. I don't think we've really imagined all the possibilities yet for that building and all the needs in the community, what we could possibly do with that building, even if it's on a short-term basis. And then I would add to that is that if we go through with all these, with our center of government building and all the moving around and demolition of building C, all that stuff, it just seems likely to me that it would be very helpful to have an intermediate space where departments could go until the building is ready. So those are my two thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Rich?
Yeah, I shared Dan's question about, is there ability to use this as flex space while we're rethinking our downtown use plan, that obviously you just spent a lot of time talking about. The other was, I was wondering, is there an intermediate price to get it to limping through condition that would be a lot less than the full renovation, so we could use it for this interim space? And then finally, what kind of timetable are we talking about if we go the deconstruction route? Thanks.
Well, can you respond?
So at the last committee meeting, when I presented the various cost options, kind of the do nothing, which was 27,000, but we didn't put a price to the other concerns that we had, which was allowing the building for further deterioration, depreciation, neighbor complaints, and trespassers. And we have had trespassers and we have had complaints and the concern was the liability that we were exposing ourselves to. The trespassers broke into the building, I think it was last year, and stole copper from the building. And so we monitor that building daily, have staff walk through that. But the building is deteriorating. When we put Cuba Medical in there for testing center, I was not in favor of that. I let Jason know that, but they moved anyway. The roof was leaking and it's gotten worse where we have to replace the roof. And so I would not feel, in my judgment as an engineer, that I would want to put anybody in that building until we made improvements. And so yes, that the 2.3 million is to make improvements to the space that are both code required, but as well as space improvements to put departments, one or two departments in there. The building is old, it's exceeded its service life. And so yes, we could do a minimal levels, but the ones that we are required to do once we occupy it would be any ADA improvements for public access, which it requires. A fire sprinkler system that does not exist and the code would require. A fire alarm system also that would be required. Mechanical system upgrades. The two major units have failed and there's no ventilation area that's also code requirement and energy code requirement, and the roof replacement. And so those are in the, well, I haven't redone the numbers just for those, but the entire building, we're in the $800,000 to $900,000 just for those that are code required. Now, the reason that Keegan Medical was able to occupy is that it was a medical building by code category before, and Keegan Medical doing that was also medical type operation. Any other operation for county government would not, and would kick us into different code requirements, which is identical. I explained to the committee before when we purchased the Tompkins Center for History and Culture and we were doing renovations there, it kicked in a code requirement that we had to do very similar upgrades, ADA, fire alarms, fire sprinkler, mechanical system upgrades, and some roof repairs. So that's not a short answer, but yes, we would be able to do that. But my feeling is, and I've shared that with the committee before, is to invest $800,000-900,000 in that building is not really worth it because it's still an old building that would require major renovations beyond that.
All right, Rich.
Yeah, thanks, Arel. That helps explain it. My other question was on timetable.
Depending on, the approval here and legislature, the actual deconstruction, and that's the term that I wonder, I catch myself saying demolition. It would be deconstruction where we would try to reuse and recycle as much as possible before we would then demolish and then take that to the landfill. That process would take 3 weeks at the most. What tends to take more is getting all the approvals and permits to do that. And once we do the deconstruction, we would infill the basement and then put asphalt. So it would be available for additional staging or parking or whatever we would want to do with that additional space. So this would be an early fall project.
Okay. Ann?
Thanks, Mike. And just to let Dan and Rich know, we have discussed the concerns that you both brought up several times in several different meetings. So, but thanks for bringing them up again. We don't take this lightly. We as far as like the flex space, that was something that we brought up, and it just doesn't seem to make sense because we'd have to put close to $2 million into the building to use it as a flex space. And it really actually doesn't make sense to bring any departments over there. No department wants to go somewhere temporarily. And the cost of moving, you would have the added cost of moving a department over there and then moving them back. So we thought that it would be much cheaper in the long run to have everybody stay in place while we look at a new center of government. Thank you.
Dan, a hand up again.
Yeah, thanks. If I can ask one more question. Any consideration, has any consideration been given to investigate whether it might be an appropriate spot for the Board of Elections storage?
No. Rich again?
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks again for the explanation on why it really doesn't make sense to use it as flex space. I also wanted to say I appreciate the committee's consideration and work towards doing deconstruction rather than demolition. I think this is something we have to do as a matter of course and build that into our construction approval process whenever we can. So I think it's really good that we set an example here. So thank you.
I'll just say that I was not in favor of this at the last meeting. I agree with Dan's comments and I won't be supporting this today. Other comments? Randy?
Just to respond to Dan's issue, we talked about this quite a bit of how the building could be reused by some other department. We talked about IT, we talked other things, and we really beat a dead horse as far as what it would cost to make that happen. Because I like the idea of using it, but I do think that it needs to be removed and deconstructed. And I want to thank Real for finding a minority women-owned business that we're looking to contract with. Is that what you said? Which is great. That's something we asked for. So.
Anyone else? Are we ready to vote? All right. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee? Yes. I vote no. That passes. And I had also about the red house options. Do we want to talk about that at this point? Or do we want to work on some of the other things in our agenda?
Mike, just a reminder that I do have to leave at 11. I can't stay longer, so.
I'm going to postpone the red house discussion then, I think. All right, let's go back up to county administrator. We got a couple more resolutions we got to get through. Let's go to Lisa.
Mike, my first agenda item is a resolution for the renewal of a 5-year lease for the Office of Human Rights.
I get a motion on that, please. Randy, Amanda? So you want to say anything about it or just we got to renew it?
We've got to renew it. It's coming to the end in August, so we can renew for another 5 years. There is an escape clause with 1 year's notice.
And the department's happy?
Yes.
Discussion on this. Okay, let's vote. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee? Yes. I vote yes.
Thank you.
You want to talk to us about the PAR forms?
Sure. The next item that I have are all of the capital projects for the departments that report to facilities and infrastructure. The first several projects are airport projects, and I see Roxanne, our airport director, is with us in case there are questions on any of them. I would say for the most part, we look through all of the pending airport projects that are, for the most part, FAA requirements, and we are receiving federal funds for, with a local share to be paid through eventual PFCs through the airport. But if there are any questions about any of the attached projects, I would defer to Roxanne for the airport projects.
I can try to answer other projects, but I'm not sure I'd be very good at it.
Roxanne, do you want to say anything about yours?
If there's questions, just let me know. I mean, these are things that are mandated. We've had the whole discussion of PFCs. These projects, I believe everything within this grouping We can use PFCs. We're going to be slower at collecting PFCs, obviously, until our employments ramp back up, but they will be in a PFC application. So the local share, will either come from airport fund balance, which will then be reimbursed when we collect the PFCs. There's really only 2 projects, 3 projects technically, but one's the taxiway. There's just different phases that are happening in 2023, and snow removal equipment. I will be very thankful to get the taxiway project completed. There's multiple phases. It's stuff that the FAA has mandated. I'm going to use a word that they tell me is not a word, but we have to now like ski haw the taxiway, kind of angle it so you can't have a direct route to the runway. So this will finalize that and get approved by the FAA for that reasons.
I would throw in a comment that perhaps the item that is most notable that is not on the capital plan for 2023, which is an FAA requirement that we new construction of the SRE building, which would be has about a $5 million price tag or local price tag. That we have asked for for them to postpone. They did complete the phase 1 planning for that building. It is to host the firefighting equipment, the fire trucks, that they're saying that it needs to be expanded. And we did not have the local funding, the share or the PFCs to complete that project. And they have allowed us to push that back in our planning. Roxanne, do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, thankfully, we do have such a really good relationship with the Northeast Region FAA people. And, they have put in money, but they understand what's happening nationwide in airports. And we're hoping to be able to use bill funding for our portion, but we cannot because, again, it's not AIP and PFC fundable. So we're working through that. They've agreed. They were, very understandable. So we're going to push that off until, more of a recovery happens and we can, increase our PFCs and see where we stand overall. But yeah, that was something that, we definitely decided we couldn't do at this time.
I know you were investigating about using that money. Is that a final at this point that we just can't get it? I know we were going to talk through our political representatives. Did anything happen there?
Yeah. So Amanda had looked at it, and then we also reached back out to the FAA, and it's all a tricky. Initially, we were hoping to reverse the legislation and be able to use other sources, but that wasn't something possible either. So hopefully, we can get this forward at some point, but yeah, the bill funding isn't eligible for this project. For the portion of the project that would be like a local share.
Appreciate the efforts. I know Lisa's been working on that as well as you, Roxanne. We appreciate
it. And I do have a call after this with Amanda when I get done on this call. So I sent you an email, Mike. I'm just going to quickly report that. American, still hasn't reversed their decision. Doesn't look likely that they will, and that they won't do a pause at this time either. Senator Schumer's office is still engaged, but that's kind of where we stand with that. I've had great meetings with Delta or with United, looking at meetings upcoming with Delta and with Spirit. So I will keep the committee, updated as things change, and, maybe some miracle can happen with Senator Schumer's office. You never know.
Anything else on the power forms? Arel or Jeff, do you want to say anything about them before we move on?
I had a question, Mike.
Oh, I didn't see your hand, Jeff. Lee.
The terminal canopy improvements, are you hiring a different design outfit to do that? Or is there some recourse on that design that came in?
Lee, I'm not really sure how to answer this.
I'll give you the background off.
That's fine. That was just disturbing when I read it. But-
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
I just want to make a comment. I'm always amazed when I see how much money is spent on the airport. It takes a little sting out of it that we get a lot of federal and state assistance. And obviously PFCs are down, so that's going to be a cost that's going to have to be addressed. I wanted to let you know, I spoke to a friend of mine who has a local company, and they do about 15 flights a week. And they asked him how many out of Ithaca. He said 2 or 3. And I asked him, well, where are you flying out of? He said, Elmira, about half of them, and Syracuse, about a quarter of them, and about a quarter of them in Ithaca. And I asked him why. And he goes, well, connections, direct flights. And I said, well, is there any way to entice you to fly from Ithaca? And he said, yeah, lower cost. So just want to share that with you. That's why they're doing it. It's lower cost where they're going. So.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. We don't have control over what they charge for tickets. But if they give us more service, I mean, it just helps overall. And the connections, that's something I'm working with Delta to get a better connecting flight westbound. And any thoughts, again, please reach out to me if you have any information or need me to attend any functions that you're doing in your communities. I'm very willing to do so.
Yes, Lisa.
I just, in terms of, I just wanted to make a couple of other remarks about the other PAR forms and projects from the other departments before moving on. And that is, so there are several, a handful of facilities projects and several highway projects. I would want to circle back to the green facilities project as the one that probably deserves a few minutes of discussion, which is that phase 1, as we just learned, the price tag of phase 1, which was, we'd hoped to complete in 2023 for about 7.3 million. The price tag for that phase is now 14.4 million. So with the funding that we initially put forth for phase 1 will take us through the projects, several projects slated for 2023. And what we're proposing in the capital plan is completing phase 1 in 2024 for the additional cost of approximately $7 million, out of which we hope we will get $2 to $2.5 million in grant funding, with Terry's help applying for those grants. But that will, as we just learned in the Johnson Controls presentation, will take us through phase 1 and will lead to those benefits that we're looking for. The price tag for phases 2 and 3 have also increased. And so we are looking at extending those out further in the capital plan just to be able to afford them and everything else that we are currently carrying in the capital plan.
That's not as good news as a public safety building, but
yes.
We appreciate your bringing that to our attention again. Anyone else? Lisa, anything else you want to report?
I think that's it for me. Thank you.
I want to, because he has a resolution, I want to drop down and take, before Amanda has to leave, take Dwight's resolution, transportation planning. Dwight, I think I saw you here somewhere. Oh, here he's actually in chambers. Welcome. Someone want to put this resolution on, authorizing Federal Transit Administration Section 53339 Bus and Bus Facilities Program Grant, Tompkins County Consolidated Area Transit. I'll move it. Moved by Lee, seconded by Randy. Want to present that to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's nice to be here in person. My internet maybe left me And so I ran over to be here.
Glad to have you.
Very good. What we're doing with this grant, it is earmarked towards a larger project to purchase 4 small battery electric buses for TCAT. And that's going to cost more than this amount of the grant that you have before you, clearly. And the purpose of this grant right now is to reserve this funding, which otherwise would lapse on October 1st. And so we are moving this proposal to you through the county and to make an application to reserve the funding.
Sounds smart. So you make the application to reserve the funding, and then what's the next action?
The next action is that we're working with TCAT on their 2023 capital planning. And also, we are still anticipating in the fourth quarter of this year that NISDOT has a federal 5311 rural formula application process, and we will be applying for funding for this project too. When TCAT provides the capital project list that they're looking for that amount. So normally, in past years, every two years, TCAT, we apply through the county, and they get about $1.5 million worth of this rural formula transit funding for their capital projects. And we anticipate that will be the same case here. We probably won't know about it until early, either late winter or early spring of 2023.
Anything else? Are we ready to vote? Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Again, before Ann leaves, let's do the minutes. Someone move those, please. June 16.
I move them.
Amanda moves them, seconded by Ann. Discussion about the minutes, changes, corrections, etc. All right, let's vote. Let's go with Randy.
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. There's a couple information. I'm going to come back to you, Jeff. I apologize for taking so long here, but the information items for budget adjustment for weights and measures, Aaron's here, and the ITCTC budget transfer. Any questions on those? Aaron, is there anything you want to say to us about that?
No, I think everything's pretty much explanatory there. Pretty much gets it all into one quick gist in the explanation section.
All right. Well, we thank you for being at our meeting, of course.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, I think we can go back up to our highway department. Jeff, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem at all, Mike. Understand you have to get the action items while Amanda's around. I just have a couple items for discussion, and if there's any questions, first is the capital payment summary. Couple items on there. Next is the quarterly highway capital status report. You could say that like 4 different ways and it would always mean the same thing. As I always say, I could go through each project if that's your interest, or you could just weave through it and ask me questions. Or as always, as you're looking through it after today and you ever have any questions on any of these projects, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, we've got a few minutes. Why don't we go ahead and have you
Okay.
work through them?
Not a problem. As I've said before, stuff that is printed in red is new this month, so that it can be highlighted to your attention. We have Etna Lane. I got to tip my head to see the right angle of my glasses. We have Etna Lane that's under construction presently, going well. Some of you were notified that they were driving piles. They wanted to start early one morning to get them done, and they aren't supposed to make a lot of noise before 7. So we heard about that and quickly got on top of it and let them know. Other than that, it's been quietly moving along. The pedestrian bridge, I've been out there probably 3 or 4 times at this point, have seen people using it. So that's good to see that is in place and getting used. Next project, East Hill intersection safety. It's really a crossing flasher, adding safety crosswalk attention to a path that crosses Ellis Hollow Road near Burger King. That is started. There's surveyors are on site locating, and the construction there should start very soon. There will be very little impact to any traffic because it's off the side of the road at that location. Station Road, we are prioritizing that, working with DEC, finalizing permit details. As you can see in some of the older comments, the concrete boxes are purchased and ready to go. We're really pushing to have that project completed this year. Podunk Road, the state local agreement is in place. All the resolutions have been passed to select the consultant, Labella. I would expect that project be progressing into earlier phases. Survey is the first one, and then they establish some preliminary design and then right-of-way needs and things like that. That's a Bridge New York, our recently awarded Bridge New York project. Here at DPW, we're continuing to make improvements to the garage area and some of the surrounding areas with some of the funding that's been allocated. We're in our second, we'd call it a phase of the floor, pouring the floor and having that completed. It's very busy. We're consolidating all our work into a couple of equipment bay or mechanic bays, but the end result has been really good. What we've been completed so far. I'd want to really thank Facilities Department. They've been quick to react to our needs and keeping our project moving in several different angles and different directions as far as we work through this. We're definitely the need to coordinate with facilities is very common, and they've been great to work with on this. Our Bridge New York project, we're in the very final throes of one person signing the right piece of paper to complete the right-of-way phase. We have been saying for a while that because of the long lead items and the precast concrete style of these crossings, what they're designed to be, they'll be unlikely to be constructed in this year. This is a 23 project construction, and so we're really looking to continue the momentum or what momentum we have. This is a state-run project, just to remind everyone of that. So we're working closely with the state to keep that momentum going, get it into a bid and award, so that the contractor whomever is awarded the projects can start the project by ordering those, long lead concrete boxes and get those on site so they could start construction in 23. Other items, we've familiar, Fall Creek Road it's a capital plan project. It's pushed out funding. It is going to be starting some of the earlier phases in 23. But the construction is out still a few years, not much to say about that. And then on the Cortlandt Street Owasco, that was accelerated. We have processed the resolutions. We've got the agreements with the consultant in place, survey. We've been in touch with the consultant and they expect survey to be starting very soon. The idea is to work through that. The construction funding for this project is in 24. So we want to start it early, knowing that there was going to be some right-of-way work. It is a locally funded project at this point. So there is also interest in following like shovel-ready projects, looking for outside sources of funding when it gets into some of the later like construction phases, the big money phases. So hopefully this project can progress and get to that point, and we can, and, fingers crossed, tie it into some outside funding source. We have some project closeouts, Ludlow Road. I just saw the 34 bridge was open today. That's great. That's the state bridge near Lansing School, after a couple of years of that being shut down, that's gonna take a lot of detour traffic off of both the county road through Ludlowville and on the town side, the Myers Point detour. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of happy people in that area. Just since I was talking about Ludlowville, I thought I'd throw that in there for everyone's information. The Ellis Hollow Road is also project closed. That's phase 3. That was a paving project. We're also closing out Central Chapel Road Bridge. And then we're looking to schedule removal of the Morel Truss Bridge. That's not really causing it or not really serving any purpose at this point. And that looks like the end of my quarterly status report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Randy.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Jeff. Jeff, could you give an update on, you had a problem with the people installing broadband on Schaefer Road. I was wondering how that got resolved. And also I had a call from a resident on Van Buskert Gulf Road, which is a county road, I learned.
Yeah.
That when they installed broadband there, Spectrum was already there and they ripped right through the Spectrum lines. So the two residents had to pay Spectrum to install those. And do they have any recourse, and how, if they do, how would they go about that?
To answer your first question on Schaefer, it's progressed after some back and forth and kind of some, as you're aware, some stop work discussions, proper permitting and updating of permits. Broad Point has been very reactive, and Bent was in this office quite a bit to renew permits and get exactly what we wanted. There was what we estimated a fair amount of damage that was done outside. No permit was issued, no notice of work was issued on Schaefer Road, and we had just done a little bit of work. We just chip sealed that section of road. So we did a fair estimate. They did give us a check that will just sit in a file, kind of a bond, if you will, payment, as far as because we decided we were going to do the work and when we did have time to fix what was done. I think they clarified with the contractor quite well, and quite honestly, riding the road now, I don't think that there's really as much work to be done as what we thought when we first saw what they had done. Really a lot of damage was done to the shoulder of the road, to explain, but they also tracked a lot on our new chip seal. So we have in there enough to do half a lane chip seal and things like that. And I just can't say, I mean, they've been very good. They really reacted exactly how we would have liked them to. As far as other projects and around, they've been equally as forthcoming with information, and really we got their attention early and they've reacted well, and it's been a good process with them so far. As far as the conflict between the utilities, I haven't heard anything about that. I wasn't aware. I would expect that they would probably work that out between them. If the homeowner wants to contact this office, maybe there's something we can do to bring the two sides together. It's kind of I hadn't heard anything about that. So it seems unusual that the homeowner would have to pay anything. So I could, if the only thing I could say is have that person, if they have any questions, then we can help have them get in touch with us.
Okay, I will. His name is Mr. Berggren, and I'll make sure he does. Thanks.
Mike, I just want to say thank you and thanks to everybody for the good presentations. I do have to run, but good meeting.
Thanks, Amanda. We got through most of it.
Yes.
We got a couple other things.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jeff, I'm still hearing from the town of Dryden about the trail crossing at German Cross Road, and they seem to feel that
Game Farm.
I'm sorry, Game Farm. I said the wrong one. That they're kind of feeling that things are being held up at the county level as far as coming up with a successful plan for that. And I just wondered, are you hearing anything on that?
I've been in touch with Dan Lamb a lot this week. We're trying to explain our side of what we feel should happen out there. We're digging into the report that was provided from Dryden, paid for by the town of Ithaca, town of Dryden, which Barton and Judas did. Dan is now working with BNL to clarify some of those things. It's not an easy crossing. We want to make sure that everything is done in an orderly way, and it's not in the interest of Tompkins County that there's any liability or added liability placed on Tompkins County residents. It's a town trail and it's a town crossing. So, I mean, I can get into specifics here or offline or however you want to do it. We are
not necessary.
We've this week has been dominated by that between John Weber, our civil engineer, and myself. It's quite involving. I think that there's some clarifications we need to get from BNL in the report. I want to make sure that it's done right and as safe as we possibly can so that no one gets injured out there. And that's really our priority.
I appreciate the continued discussions with the town.
Yeah.
Were there any questions on the capital payment summary? Okay. Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to talk to us about today?
Not today. Just we're out working in the heat, staying hydrated. Our projects are all going really well. Employees are doing a great job. It's been nice and quiet as far as a lot of things that have happened over the years, and we're going to continue to work at that and have that be the norm.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
As far as transportation, I would just mention that New York State DOT is paving Route 366 from NYSEG into Cornell and through Varna. And that's actually going on. I was held up driving down at that intersection, not terribly long, but it's actually happening. So that was in pretty bad shape, and it's a main access to Cornell University. So it's important that be a good functioning highway. And we're glad DOT is doing that. And I reported, as Jeff said, about the Route 34 bridge. I think I got an email about that showed a picture of it. didn't look particularly exciting, but it looked very functional. Randy, you wanted to talk about the exterior of the Health and Human Services building.
Yes, just out of curiosity for what's going on, I decided to walk around there one late afternoon and just observe things. And as I looked at the area, I noticed one dead tree on the State Street in front of the building. And then there was another dead tree in the campus, kind of the inside part of that. And that there was very little landscaping and sometimes none. Some of it again on the sidewalk area of State Street, which may be a city requirement. I don't know. And there, doors, faded in paint and just other things like that. And I noticed that landscaping on the inside of the building, a lot of weeds, the landscaping was done, just not well maintained. And I don't want to make it a big issue, but I just wanted to bring that up, and I don't know whose responsibility that is, but I wanted to bring that up. So
that would be the right person to talk to would be Arel.
Yeah, that's me. And this whole time I've been trying to put together pictures before and after. So Katrina did give me a heads up on that. And I can actually show you, we've done a lot of work on that. And I can explain.
I realize it's somewhat minor. I just wanted to understand what responsibility was of the county versus the city. And I mean, you can see just, cigarette butts everywhere in front of the building. And I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them. And I understand why, because of the people that are moving through there. I just wanted to bring it up. So.
In any case,
okay, well,
my focus when I did hear about that, I'm sorry, is that we've had a reduced staff at that building because of individuals off on disability, but then also because of the increasing security concerns, safety outside the building. I've limited the amount of time that I want our staff, because typically they would go out early in the morning to do any work outside the building, to not spend much time out there, get litter and things like that. And in any case, when I saw that email, I had actually, you were thinking as I was going to do a drive through the building, not when you did it, but beginning of the week. No, actually it was last Thursday afternoon, Friday. And my focus was on security. What can we do to improve visibility, security? And so the pictures that I was going to show were before and afters. We have several cameras, as I shown you before. There are 2 cameras, actually 3 on the side of the building where we have the parking lots and entrance to the Human Services building. And the 2 of the cameras were blocked by trees. And we had partial view of sidewalks, the building, face of the building. And then there's a shed. It used to be a smoking shelter. Lee may remember back when we built the building, which is not possible anymore, but we built across the entrance a smoking shelter, which now is in violation of our policy because we can't smoke on county properties. In any case, that there were overgrown shrubs and trees, branches low. And so what's happened is a lot of activity after hours is occurring there, drug use. To be honest, people are defecating in that shelter and urinating, and our staff have reported that to me. So I basically said, cut down the branches, shrubs, so we have clear visibility. And so if you walk there now, there are no trees blocking any of our cameras. All the shrubs are no taller than sill height against the building. The cameras that formerly had blocked view on the sidewalk face the building, we have clear view of shrubs. Anybody that's either in the shrubs or hiding in the shrubs, we can see clearly the sidewalk along both sides of the building on the north and south. Before we couldn't see if there was somebody hiding in front of a vehicle that was parked up against the curb. And then we have a plaza camera that can see across to that shed and the smoking shelter. And we've cut all the shrubs, and you can see clearly there is a light on the shed, but it was always blocked by the shrubs and the branches. Now at night, we've verified that that light is on by photocell, and we have clear view of the plaza. Security is pleased. I let Kit know what we've done. I also shared with Lisa during my budget review a couple of days ago that I'm recommending that we put a chain link fence on the parking lot, between the parking lot on the State Street side and the adjacent building. Our staff are having to pick up hypodermic needles every day throughout the day that are being thrown on our side of our property, and it's unsafe. They're picking up needles. On the opposite side, there's two lots, as you know, in the front of the building. That has a fence. It's always had a fence between the parking lot and the Salvation Army. I'm not sure why it wasn't done on the other side. So we are getting quotes to put in a chain link fence with slats in it like we've done on the opposite side, so that syringes aren't being thrown over onto our property, because we're picking them up morning and afternoon as our staff go out there. So there was a concerted effort. If you walked through earlier this week, I had probably 6 employees working as a team doing that. I felt it was safer. I went there yesterday to observe on how things were. And while we were there, the police were called, and there was an individual, 2 police in the parking lot, had a person on the ground, and they were handcuffing him. And so fortunately, our staff were already back in the building, but those are the reasons why we hadn't addressed a lot of the landscaping issues at that point. But now, if you walk through, my focus was both landscaping, but priority was security. How can we improve security with visibility, both for employees in the building, they can see out the windows, as well as cameras having a good view of everything that's going on around the property.
Thank you for doing that. So is the shed still going to stay, or?
Well, so the other thing we're going to do is we're going to enclose it. The only thing that's in there now, because there's no bench, there is an exhaust fan, doesn't work for smoke removal. We're going to close the shelter portion, because just to the right of it is a shelter or a shed where we keep snow blowers and stuff like that. We're going to enclose it and bring out the bike rack out to the plaza. And that way we won't have any issues with people in that shed at night and doing the things that they're currently doing.
It's a challenge, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Not a problem, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for that thorough response. And it's even more distressing to hear about our staff having to clean up needles and things there. Cigarette butts are bad enough.
Right.
Ann, you had your hand up at one point. Was there something that you wanted to add or not? Was that an old?
It was in regards to when you were talking about Route 13 and I was just going to add, if I didn't say this before at another meeting, that as far as electric vehicle infrastructure, the New York State plan is to not just have electric vehicle charging stations along the major intra and interstates, but one of the few offshoots that they're doing is Route 13 down to Ithaca. So I just wanted to let folks know about that's really exciting.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Okay. Arel, I promised the county historian I would ask a question. We had the Glen Norris painting restored, and we really thank you and Alan for all the help that you gave the commission on that. And it's back on the wall, but the wall has a severe crack in it next to the painting. And the Historic Commission is going to fund a plaque to go with the painting to explain it. And she's wondering about whether we could get that crack fixed.
We can. I noticed that yesterday, and it's beautiful. They've done a wonderful job. It looks brand new, like it was just done. And so I noticed that. I'm going to make Dana aware of it. It's a tough, those plaster walls are tough. And so
Yes.
we want to make sure that there's no moisture before we do any of that, because we can do the repair. And then if there's still moisture trapped, then we'll get more deterioration. So yes, I will make sure that.
Thank you.
we
I'll let her know
take
you're
care of
looking
that.
into that. Thank you very much. Anything else folks would like to bring up today? I'm sorry, we're 15 minutes over. All right, shall we adjourn? Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Ron. I know it's a real challenge down there.
No, I've got if you want to look at the pictures, please.
Yeah, there's a lot of things down there.